Even the African American poet Nico Sini wrote in Igbo land the poem and featured the motif of Mbari. So we're thinking of the various transnational remaking of Mbari and possibly how Mbari has expanded from 1960s to this present moment and how and what sort of futurity is possible with its literary connaissance. So we're going to discuss a whole lot about Mbari. So I am just giving us some kind of preliminary information that can guide our discussion. Thank you so much. So, Mbari in fiction, Mbari in poetry, Mbari as cultural movement, Mbari as aphrodisiac motif. All of these would be covered in this discussion, and the Afrofuturity within the Mbari um, literary modernity. Okay, so in 4 minutes. May I ask every one of us to turn in our videos? I would start by doing it. Uh,
Okay, some seconds, please.
we just
Hello?
and it's not gonna look okay. Yeah, but if
Hello? Mm. Yeah,
there's a
I can see you
destruction
now. Yes.
network.
It's rock.
We
Hello?
go
Please, can anybody hear him clearly? Is it his network?
No, I can't hear him clearly, so I think his network is not
Oh, it is network. All right,
yeah,
sir.
network. Yeah, let's be patient.
All right, sir. Good to see you
I,
again, sir.
at the moment, I'm somewhere in Nigeria, and I may be just.
Oh.
Hello,
Hello, welcome.
can you hear me now?
Yes, clearly.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Oh, oh, thank God.
For a second, I
Nice.
thought it was Nigeria, you understand? But for the first time in a long time, it's not Nigeria.
It is Nigeria, actually.
Oh, no, it's not Nigeria.
Okay, okay, please, we are very much welcome to this conversation. We thank Sevio and the Knowledge Group for spearheading, and of course, the first, if I'm right, uh, edition of Ibadan Arts Festival, IbaFest 2025. And I think this is done this is actually starting on a grand, even if it is the first time occasion to talk about literature, and it extremely connected in terms of not only cultural importance, but as well spiritual and social development of several writers that have been produced in Nigeria, Africa, and the diaspora. So this literary festival, the talk, especially the panel title, Literary Ibadan, Mbari, the Arts and the Spirit of Cultural Continuity, offers the opportunity to engage with two important variables, literature, Mbari, and Ibadan as a place of cultural continuity. And situated within this discussion, we recall the historical beginnings of Mbari. Of course, take it away from the Igbo cultural, spiritual meaning up to how it's been used as an artistic motif that somewhat became a cultural movement with the beginning of this cultural movement dated back to the 1960s, where intellectuals, cultural historians, cultural icons like Wole Soyinka, Chinua Achebe, Uli Bier, the German and philosopher and intellectual colossus in history. We have all of these continue to its literary presence in Ibadan and elsewhere, because Ibadan has presence in other places and cultural movement of the 1960s. It's produced that period writers continuity within the Ibadan metropole at that time, especially the University of Ibadan, where eggheads, cultural eggheads came together and formed what today has materialized as some kind of cultural continuity. In this discussion, I have two very brilliant Ibadan scholars, I would say. Yes, Fumigaji came from Lagos State University, but like many Ibadan professors will say, you come to confirm your postgraduate certificate at the University of Ibadan. And this history is entangled with mine. I came from University of Nigeria and Nsukka. Oh, of course, a powerhouse in University of in literature in Nigeria. So University of Nigeria and Nsukka, coming to UI. But the same story is that I came to probably validate my certificate at the University of Ibadan. But when we speak of, uh, I think it is almost the same for my big friend Akintela. He as well, uh, if I'm not mistaken, he got his first degree from University of Ilorin. I know him well enough to know where he uh, um, picked his first degree, and then masters, and then of course PhD, University of Ibadan, and he's a lecturer at the University of Ibadan, where he teaches discourse analysis, pragmatics, and literary stylistics. Uh, Akintela will offer us a lot of the historical uh, ideas or information about Mbari and how Ibadan became that central point of cultural transfer or cultural continuity in African literature and world literature. Please welcome Dr. Akintela of the Department of English, University of Ibadan, as well as Fumi Gaji, a Nigerian poet, editor, and literary researcher. Uh, the co-founder and the founder and editor-in-chief of Artisan's Quill, a journal devoted to literary craftsmanship and contemplative writing. Her work sits at the intersection of memory, silence, faith, identity, and language. So combining the linguistic, the English linguistic, and of course discourse analysis background of Akintela and Fumi Gaji's uh, work, research in intersection of memory, silence, faith, identity, and language. We have two powerful panelists to unpack the whole significance of Mbari, Ibadan, and cultural continuity as we start Ibadan Arts and Book Festival. So may I invite Dr. Akintela to give us a background, what he knows about the cultural movement of the 1960 Mbari, and how that has brought in Ibadan to its place of cultural uh, presence in Africa and across the globe.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Martins. I hope you can hear me clearly.
Yes, we
Dr.
can.
Martins is an old friend, and Migaji too. It's nice to be here. The last time we were on a panel together, that was on Professor Nduka Tiono's Tino's new collection of poetry, and that was also something literary. So we are back again on the literary table. And this time around, it seems we are making an excursus into uh, a, a segment of Nigerian literary history that we can't deny. One of the vital micro histories of artistic modernism, so to say, in Nigerian context. So thank you very much for inviting me. Well, I wasn't there in the 1960s when they started, but from what I've read here and there, I can say one or two things about the historical background of the Mbari Club, which some people in some other places have referred to as the Mbari Writers and Artists Club, so to say. You know, it reminds one of what Professor Femi Oshobison was trying to do in that his famous university lecture titled The City as Muse, so to say, where he was looking at Ibadan and how Ibadan, especially the university, has contributed to the efflorescence of Nigerian literature, so to say. So that, by the way, I think the Mbari Club, from what I've read about it, functioned as a sociocultural hub in the 60s. And I think it was founded precisely around 1961 by a collection of Nigerian writers and artists, a mixture of both visual artists and writers. So Wole Soyinka, J.P. Clark, Uche Okeke, Dennis Oko, and then, of course, very importantly, the German publisher and collector, Uli Bayer, was also there. And a significant member of that group at that initial stage was the South African writer Iskam Faleli. He was also a member of that group. In fact, he was once a director of the Congress for Cultural Freedom or something like that.
Yes.
And then he brought in his express at that point in time. So, as per the naming of the Mbari Club, I think record has it that Achebe actually played a major role in the naming of that space and that cultural movement as Mbari. Remember that Mbari served it's a cultural practice or some visual art form of the Igbo people in southeastern Nigeria, which is quite historical. So what they do in the process is that they build something like an altar to offer some kind of propitiation to the goddess of creation, Allah. Allah. I hope I got that right. So
That is Allah.
Allah. Yes.
God of the earth.
The God of the earth or the God of creation, as the case may be. So Chinua brought in that name and suggested it and connected it to. But what I liked about it at that point in time is I think it must have been the cosmopolitan and transcultural outlook of that organization at the beginning. The record does not say that anybody raised any dust as per the name. The highest that happened to reach was that at later points, some of the core members of the group who were Yorubas, not even the initial members, extended Mbari and tried to domesticate it by saying something like Mbari, Mbayo, and all of that, But nobody at any point in time brought in the issue of ethnicity into the naming and all of that. And to show you how transcultural and cosmopolitan that space was at that point in time, the writers were focused on just art, as the case would be. And apart from that, the writers, they were not just writers, they were visual artists and others who were also creative. So it was a creative of not just of writers, but of visual artists and other kind of performers. And that's part of its cosmopolitan nature. Then apart from that, record even has it that if you wanted to, and I think in terms of spatial location, I think I once came across a book that said that the initial location was a former nightclub at Onireke in Ibadan, around the former Onireke Road, somewhere around Onireke in Ibadan. And the place was quite popular at that point in time. That same place had a library which was dedicated to African literature of different shades, even of the diaspora. And there was, for me, another point another pointer to the cosmopolitan nature of what they were trying to establish. There was a food joint or a cafe owned by Lebanese just right around the corner. It was called, I think, the Western Cafe, if I remember very well. So
Yes.
they didn't see any reason to attack that as not being African or anything, but they accommodated that as part of the space all the same. So that transcultural outlook was there from time to time. And we should also remember that an extension of that transcultural outlook is also the Black Orpheus, right? Remember, the Black Orpheus became one of the things that came out of the Mbari Club. Okay, there's a connection between the club and Black Orpheus, which was founded, well, they had published as far back as 1957, but the Black Orpheus was brought into the picture of the Mbari story at later points too. And the Black Orpheus published works by all writers from different parts of world, from different parts of Anglophone Africa. So the foundation of Mbari Club was cosmopolitan and very transcultural in nature. So I wanted to emphasize that cosmopolitanism and transculturality as the case may be. Then the Mbari Club gave writers, gave artists a physical space, okay, so that they could go, it became some kind of cultural hub for young independent artists or creatives in a young independent nation, so to say. So it was I put a quote somewhere. I'm trying to locate that quote in my notes here. A quote from is it Chika Okeke Agulu or so, who said that, yes, who said that the Black Orpheus was a complex scenario of collapsed boundaries, a non-linear flow of artistic influences, and a compelling manifestation of an aspect of modernist experience in which immigrant Europeans, Black diaspora, and post-colonial Nigerian artists created a laboratory where local and appropriated forms from diverse artistic genres and disciplines coalesced to produce a thriving contemporary visual culture. So it was that kind of a space at that point in time, quite cosmopolitan, like I said, and then to domesticate it or try to appropriate the same idea in some other spaces. In Osogbo later, we had Mbari in Osogbo. There was Mbari Enugu later on. There were even attempts at founding Mbari clubs outside of Nigeria and in some international spaces by some international scholars and cultural practitioners. These are well-documented facts, so to say. So it was really a that produced a number of internationally acclaimed writers beyond Shoyinka, beyond Achebe, beyond John Piper Clark. We'll still come back to some of our old writers like Gabriel Okara. Kofi Awono also passed through it at a point in time. Amos Tutola interacted with that space. Dennis Brutus, Alex Laguma, and I think even Fagua. All of them at one point in time or the other presented their work or their works, so to say, at the Mbari Club. So it has that nationalist outlook too, apart from being very, very cosmopolitan. Remember that some of those who formed it, especially Uche Nwoko and Demas Okeke, had demonstrated that habit of questioning what exists and creating something new. Okay, even from their days in Zaria, they were members of the Zaria Art Society. Okay, so that again they brought forward when they came to this point, and so it was really a hub of literary artists, and it served that purpose just before the war came. So it was a space. It was also a time. It could be defined both spatially and temporally, but his art was not confined to that space or that temporal frame alone. It has this artistic universality, and that's why we've had attempts as trying to institute what we have as Mbari then in some other spaces. So we have quite this documentation of all of this. And remember, Mbari years later, around 2009, many years later, still contributed. Some of the ideas of Mbari was still brought forward when Center for Black Arts and International Understanding, if I'm right, at
Yeah,
Oshobo was
yes.
formed. Many of the collections that featured at the Mbari Club were brought there, and we still have that center in Oshobo. But we need to ask ourselves critical questions about what that center is doing and what it's trying to do to replicate his great-grandfather, Mbari, in the recent of it. So I hope this is sufficient as a starter.
It is more than sufficient because you have taken us through the various spaces that Mbari picked up and where it has taken us. And you talked about Mbari within its that convergence of independent-minded thinkers, scholars, literary artists, creatives, and social, cultural advocates. And then, of course, you gave that broad view of it from the fact that it's not restricted to the national writers that we know, our big icons, Soyinka, Achebe. You extended it to other writers from South Africa, Ezekiel Mfalele, Uliber, the itinerant cultural philosopher, and the legend of African literature and culture, the German philosopher brought in his artistic talent in it. And then you mentioned very significantly the uh, the place of Orpheus within the Mbari um, um, point. Of course, you discussed Mbari within the spatial location, the temporal, and the trans cosmopolitan nature of Mbari generally, Mbari as a physical space, Mbari within the temporal, and how Nigeria Civil War, the Biafra War ruptured things, but that didn't still restrict the international growth of that movement. Of course, it may have temporarily affected it, but the spread of Mbari across the African diaspora and other places in the world would show such growth, such expertise to um, to come to couple two things: Ibadan memory of writing and Mbari. What has been the story so far? What do we what what do you think Mbari has made Ibadan writers community or those scholars to achieve? Maybe at this point you just lay it bare. We of course we think of several writers that have emerged from the University of Ibadan who have followed through the history and the trajectory of this memory helps to advance literary presence in Nigeria and outside. Hello, Fumigaji.
Hello, I can hear you clearly.
Yes, yes.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Dr. Teller, for that very panoramic, ground covering introduction. So I'll begin by talking about what Mbari means in terms of the convergences it's orchestrated, in terms of what it stirred up, what it did, and what and how it is viewed, how the issue of perception defines what we make of it. You know, Mbari can be seen as two things. It can be seen as something that started and ended, and it can also be seen as something that is continuous. You know, if we look at it as something that started and ended, you know, that we are trying to resurrect, then that means there's a problem with the framing, with the understanding of things. So I'll choose to look at it as something that is always there. You know, when you look at For people in the sciences, they talk about the fact that energy is not created. It is transmuted, it is harnessed, but you don't create it. So I'm looking at Mbari as something, as a spirit, as a spirit that was harnessed. And it began, as Dr. Tella said, it began, with the Igbo culture, where they had to honor Allah. And in my readings, I discovered that a lot of times there were things called Mbari huts, and they were constructed in the wake of tragedies, communal tragedies. So they came together to appease the goddess of the earth. But in appeasing the goddess of the earth, we also must realize that, art is also therapy. And so, in appeasing the goddess, they are also mending the fractured soul of community. The fractured soul that was bashed by the tragedy they confronted. So that spirit was what was brought together, in the Mbari Club. We see a group of people that are grappling with the newly created entity called Nigeria. Nigeria started out fragmented already. It started out broken. And now these people are coming together to build their own Mbari huts, where all forms of artists come together, creating everything, soothing the communal soul, invoking what it means for people to be for community, community for people, both of them for creation, for art, for renewal, for everything, for joy, for what somebody like Zora Neale Austin would consider black joy, the joy of being, of creating in defiance of things. Now, when we look at Ibadan as the setting for that particular incarnation of the Mbari spirit, Ibadan happens to be a very interesting community for it. There was a lecture by Professor Toyin Falola some years ago, and it changed the way I looked at Ibadan. It said something about in the days of old, warriors came from everywhere and they converged in Ibadan. And now we have a different type of warrior or a different type of war being fought. Now we are talking about intellectual war, the war of ideas. And Ibadan still happens to be that magnet. All of us come from our different places. We come from our different institutions. We converge there. And once we converge there, we begin all forms of spiritual, academic, intellectual, physical expressions. We try to build something. Now, when we talk about that spirit of Mbari and the continuity, it isn't something it is ephemeral, and it's also permanent. Its permanence and ephemeralness, they are linked and they define each other fundamentally. Those Mbari huts constructed in those days, they were not made of things like marble or stones. They were made of things that should be absorbed by the earth. This is to affirm the cycle of life, of existence. It comes up, we erect it, it goes down, and we know it will still come up again. Like it's just, there's this back and forth between creation, destruction, absorption, emergence. And that's what everything is about. And the fact that art is always at the edge of things. And being at the edge means that it's always at the brink of the solution. At the same time, it's always at the precipice of beginnings, of possibilities, which is what we should also note that Ibadan also stands for. We should know that the name Ibadan comes from Eba, that is between the plains and between the land, like between the plains and between the forest. It's a middle place, a liminal place where convergences happen for the nourishing of the human psyche. It's just that point, that core where everything is being fed and transformed and nurtured and where we stand at the brink of things to define things through art, while art also defines us. So what I'm saying is that what the Mbari Club stood for in its existence then, in its nature then, and even now in its various incarnations, because it has had many incarnations, as Dr. Martin said earlier, it has incarnated in different places, even in the diaspora, as Afrofuturism, the spirit is in Black Joy, it even woke up in Oshodo as Mbari Bayo. Please, am I audible?
Yes, you
Oh, okay, thank
are.
you. So it's
I
like
don't know for this.
it's like that. It's like, should we call it the Abiku child? No, because we this is a permanence, an impermanence that we anticipate, that we get a chance to be part of, a chance to nurture, for the wholeness of humanity and the society. It's all about navigating that tension between creation and destruction, creativity, and most importantly, it is about honoring that same spirit, that animates everything that represents creativity and being. It even occurred to me that it's that very same spirit that is actually at the notion of Soyinka's postulations on Ogun. Ogun bestriding the threshold, standing across the abyss where there's so much chaos, navigating these tensions to create something new. So what we create does not last, but that we can create and that we will create is what lasts. And it's what immunes us. It's what makes us human. It is what trumps all institutions, what trumps all obstacles, what trumps all ideological disarray. And finally, before I yield the mic, one thing that really struck me too about it is it started out as in Bali, and then it was transported, or it was merged with the spirit of Ibadan. And from there, we had the creation of the Mbari Bayo group in Oshogo. And it was okay. It was fine. And that sort of mirrors something that we've lost, these days. One spirit that is lacking nowadays. Nowadays, you see people all over the internet now arguing about, is this thing actually gele or a chaffle? Is it Owambe or Owambe? And we keep dragging these things, and it just mirrors the fragmentation that is reducing us to subhumans. Art elevates, and whatever fragments people, whatever breaks people apart like that, is directly an anathema to the spirit of art itself. So it's just sometimes the fact that this is a continuous thing, the fact that the embodied spirit is undying, doesn't actually mean that this spirit cannot actually withdraw without being recognized, when it's not recognized the way it should be. So when we have discussions like this, it's just a call for us to recognize the spirit and honor it how best we can. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fumigaji. You have led us through various points, convergence. Mbari as memory, as a place for artistic convergence. The fact of continuity is so clear in in your discussion of Mbari. You talked about it as a liminal place, and I like the position you have held, bringing in Mbari, its spiritual essence, the Ibadan spiritual essence, the liminal positions between Mbari and Ibadan. You thoroughly discussed and brought to light. Yes, we do not have all the time to uh, to discuss Mbari and literary Ibadan, but we can yield the floor to the audience who would like to ask questions, because we have covered a whole lot, even with these two panelists. We have discussed Mbari as a physical space, as a social space, as a spiritual space. Mbari's continuity with Black Orpheus in the central of it all, as enunciated by Dr. Akintela. Uh, the liminality of Mbari and Ibadan became such an active discourse point in Fumigaji's discussion. And she didn't fail to bring about memory and reconnaissance. The fact that there is no temporal closure for Mbari in her discussion. So I elicit some questions. I don't know if you have questions. You can raise your hand. I can only take two questions, if possible, please, before we wrap up from the audience. You can raise your hand. I'd like a reaction, or probably you drop a message on the chat. Use the chat tool to ask your questions. Do we have questions? Looks like nobody's raising their hands. Okay. Oh, without questions now, I'd have Fumigaji and Akintela take closing shots in this talk, this conversation. I'd like us to I'll start with Akintela. Please, in like 1 minute, how do you think that Mbari and Ibadan will influence the future generation of creatives?
Well, it's definitely, well, Mbari as a physical space, or as it may not exist any longer. But we still have the substance, the core essence of Mbari itself, which would be the ideals and the ideas of the progenitors, the people who actually established Mbari, which is to promote arts in a very crate-free space for creatives to thrive. And so we can always replicate that by not getting tired of creating such spaces. Anything we can do to support creatives that are coming up, even if it means creating spaces where we engage in meaningful manners. Of course, Mbari might have influenced the latter Poetry Club and some other establishments. So it's now for us to see how we may not call it Mbari, but how we can replicate spaces, also spaces where creatives can meet. And these creatives must be socially committed to the point that they do not just do the creative aspects, the creative products alone. They also engage in the kind of discourse, national, international, that affects them, and even go into taking actions. Because Mbari was not just about the creative output. Mbari, remember, even supported the Black Americans at a point in time. So all of these are what we create a space. Apart from the space, we then bring in the ideas and the ideals of the forefathers who created that space, see how we can support the arts, see how we can support the kind of discourse or discourses that promote our collective humanity from time to time. Because just like the progenitors saw colonialism as violent and thought that propitiation was necessary, and that brought about the name Mbari. We also need to see what is happening in the world we live in and the different insignias of instability that we encounter from time to time as events and events that we need to react to, we need to propitiate by the promotion of arts. But because if we leave that space to these mongers of negativities, we may never, it may affect our humanity in the long run. So that must be done. Universities must be part of it. Lovers of art must be part of it. Patrons of art must be part of it. Even associations, collectives of writers, of artists must be part of it, of creating that space from time to time.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Akintela. Yeah, to wrap up, Fumi Gaji, something to take away from Ibadan, that fusion, that space you mentioned between Mbari and Ibadan.
Well,
Fumi Gaji, please, a
yes,
closing
I can hear
shot.
you. Okay, can you hear me,
A closing
please?
shot. A closing
Yes.
shot, please.
All right. Can
Because
you
our
hear
time
me,
is up.
please? Can you
Yes,
hear
yes,
me? All right.
yes.
I agree with the Dr. Teller. I would also say something that even though what the founders of Mbari Club created, has been absorbed by the earth, but there's still something magnetic about what Mbari achieved in Ibadan, such that many of us who went to University of Ibadan for postgraduate studies, we were actually drawn there by that spirit, just to go there and see for ourselves. And when you get to the Department of English, UI, and you see that picture of Wale Soyinka on the wall, Achebe and everything, you know that graduate students want to take pictures there all the time. It's just a way of trying to get close to the heart of things. Now, what would I like us to take away from this? I'd like us to take away the fact that even though it appears that we have many literary magazines, many literary websites, many literary initiatives in Nigeria, I believe we still don't have enough. And that was what inspired me to create my own literary website. I believe that we need to create more platforms for more varied voices to be represented and amplified, because the various forms we have, both the ones that are being expressed now and the ones that we haven't even found room for, they are all necessary in appeasing the chaos of the age. And then I would also like us to ponder about the unity that Mbari Club was able to foster, and reappraise ourselves in view of the current, disunity, conflict, everything. You go all over social media, you see gorilla, you're a bastard, and that's actually something that's the chaos of this age that we need to come together as artists to address by creating platforms, by creating opportunities for tension, negotiation. We just need to do something. The artists of old, they created these structures to in the wake of tragedy. We can't just keep looking back without looking forward, without looking at our own place in making a difference with art. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my very good friends and literary collaborators, Fumigaji and Akintela, both PhDs. They have probably sufficiently proven their mettle today, and that's the reason Sevio uh, considered them as panelists for this session. And I'm grateful to Savio Badamosi and the Knowledge Publishing Group for starting something that will become one of the biggest cultural movements in Nigeria and its diaspora, and I mean African diaspora as well. It's been a very brilliant time. We've had beautiful discussions around Mbari and literally Ibadan. And so I close this by asking the audience to continue this conversation because there is no end. Just like as Fumi Gaji said, yeah, Ibadan and Mbari occupy that liminal zone where there is no end to this discussion of this cultural movement. And so we should foster opportunities to discuss literature, to discuss Mbari. That way we live within the spirit of Mbari as a form of cultural continuity, as we offer to repair our broken world, as Fumigaji mentioned. We are indeed replicating the renaissance, the cultural renaissance that Mbari embodies. And on this note, I say thank you to Savio Badamosi and the Knowledge Group for offering me the opportunity to moderate this session. It was a very brilliant session. I'd have Savio Badamosi say one or two things to close, to wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been great being here. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of the day and the rest of the festival.
Okay, thank you. So please, Savio Badamosi, you're a representative of Ibadan Book Art Festival. Can you?
Yes. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. The session has officially ended, but we are starting the next panel session on the other meeting room. The link will probably be shared before we close here, but it's starting for anyone who has that. It's starting on the next Zoom link that has been provided via social media, but I also posted it right here in the chat box so that everyone can connect. I'm doing that right now, and I will get to we'll get to everyone right now.
Right.
Coming.
We'll be waiting for it. Thank you.
So when is it starting, please?
It has started already.
All right. Okay.
I
Okay.
see
Quickly,
Oga
please.
Tosibogi
Let's have
raising-
it, please.
Oga
Let's have
Tosibogi
it.
raising his
Yeah,
hand.
good morning, everyone. I just wanted to say that it looks like if this is the first panel of the festival, then it looks
Yes.
like the spirit of Mbari has continued to live on. Thank you for this wonderful panel, everyone.
Thank you so much, Professor Bogi.
Professor Bogi, thank you.
Please, we expect that you send the link so we can join. I haven't seen the link.
Yes, we're on it. We'll send it shortly now.
Right. Thank you.
Within the period, can we have some closing poems by the panelists?
Sincere apologies. We won't be able to do that, Mr. Hansen. Sorry, we apologize. We won't be able to
Ibadan
accommodate
running
that.
splash of rust and gold, flung and scattered among seven hills like broken china in the sun.
It
JP
works.
Clark.
All right, thank you very much. So we've dropped the link for the next panel session. It's on it's in the chat box, and we'll have to close the Zoom meeting right about now. So thank you very much.
Where is it? We still haven't seen it.
Oh, it's in the
Or
chat
is it
box.
only me?
It's in the chat box.
Is where I am already. I can't find it. What's happening?
Yes, it's there already. Maybe let me forward you on WhatsApp.
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Please do.